I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to happen. I'm sorry.
Save your tears. They're 6 months late.
The text message that destroyed my marriage came on a Tuesday at 2:47 p.m. while I was installing smart thermostats in Mrs. Henderson's guest bedroom. Alicia's tablet pinged on the kitchen counter, and I glanced over out of habit. The preview showed enough to make my stomach drop like a hammer through drywall. Can't wait to feel you inside me again while that pathetic husband of yours is crawling around in someone else's attic. I stood there holding a Phillips head screwdriver, staring at those words until they burned into my retinas. The sender was Dylan Maddox, the real estate agent who'd hired me 6 months ago to install a home automation system in his condo. The same Dylan who'd shaken my hand, complimented my work, and apparently been screwing my wife the entire time. My name is Dean Carter, and I fix things for a living. Broken pipes, faulty wiring, cracked foundations. You name it, I can repair it. But standing in that kitchen, watching more messages pop up on Alicia's screen, I realized some things can't be fixed. They can only be demolished. The messages kept coming. Graphic details about what they'd done in our bed. Jokes about how I was too busy with my tools to notice what was happening under my own roof. The worst part? Alicia's responses were just as filthy, just as cruel. She called me clueless and boring and said I was lucky to have her. I set down the screwdriver and walked back to Mrs. Henderson's guest room like nothing had happened. Finished installing the thermostat with steady hands while my world crumbled around me. 23 years of marriage, and I'd been reduced to a punchline in someone else's dirty joke. When I got home that evening, Alicia was cooking dinner like she did every Tuesday. Spaghetti and meatballs, my supposed favorite. She smiled at me with those perfect white teeth she'd had veneered last year with money from our joint account. "How was your day, honey?" she asked, not looking up from the stove. "Fine," I said. "Just fine." I watched her move around our kitchen, the kitchen I'd renovated 2 years ago, installing custom cabinets and granite countertops because she'd begged me to make it magazine perfect. She looked beautiful as always, her blonde hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing the blue dress I'd bought her for our anniversary. She had no idea I knew, no idea her tablet had betrayed her secret, and I decided right then that I wouldn't tell her. Not yet. That night, after she fell asleep, I slipped down to my workshop in the basement. I'd been slowly converting it into a smart home command center, installing security cameras and automation systems throughout the house. What had started as a hobby was about to become my weapon. I pulled up the camera feeds on my laptop. Kitchen, living room, front door, back door, all recording to cloud storage with motion detection. I'd installed them 6 months ago, right after Dylan's project, claiming I wanted to protect our home from break-ins. Alicia had rolled her eyes, but hadn't objected. Smart woman, not smart enough. I spent the next 3 days acting normal while I planned. Made coffee in the morning, kissed Alicia goodbye, went to work, came home for dinner. But every spare moment I was preparing, installing new cameras, upgrading the system, creating a digital net that would catch every lie, every betrayal, every moment of their affair. On Friday, I struck gold. Motion sensor in the living room triggered at 1:23 p.m. while I was supposed to be at a job across town. I watched the footage later that evening, and there they were, Dylan and Alicia on our couch, going at it like teenagers. She was wearing the red lingerie I'd bought her for Valentine's Day. I sat in my basement workshop, watching my wife cheat on me in high definition, and I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger exactly, something more calculating. More dangerous, I copied the video to 3 different secure servers and saved it to an encrypted drive. Then I opened a new notebook and started making lists. Dylan's routines, his business contacts, his weaknesses. His car, a black Mercedes C-Class that he was stupidly proud of. By Sunday night, I had a plan. The first phase was information gathering. I needed to know everything about Dylan Maddox, his business dealings, his other women, his vulnerabilities. Lucky for me, I'd already been inside his condo for 2 weeks installing smart home systems. I'd seen his computer, his files, his habits. I'd even installed a security camera in his bedroom at his request. What Dylan didn't know was that I'd programmed the camera to send feeds to my own server. What a trusting soul. Monday morning, I called in sick to my scheduled job and drove to Sal's Diner on Route 40. I knew Dylan met clients there every Monday at 10 a.m. because I'd overheard him mention it during our project. I sat in a corner booth nursing coffee and watching him glad hand potential sellers. The man had no idea he was being studied like a lab rat. At 11:30, Dylan left the diner and walked to his Mercedes. I watched him check his phone, frown, then try to start the car. Nothing. He tried again, still nothing. He popped the hood, poked around for a few minutes, then called a tow truck. What Dylan didn't know was that I'd cloned his car's key fob during the condo installation and used it to disable his battery connection remotely. A simple trick I'd learned from YouTube. Amazing what you can do with the right tools and a little creativity. I followed the tow truck to Jerry's auto shop on Eastern Avenue. While Dylan argued with the mechanic about the mysterious electrical problem, I slipped around back and planted a GPS tracker under his rear bumper. Military grade, magnetic mount, 3-month battery life. I'd bought it online for home security purposes. Phase 2 was psychological warfare. I wanted Dylan paranoid, looking over his shoulder, questioning every little thing that went wrong in his life. I wanted him to feel hunted. Over the next week, I made his life miserable in small, untraceable ways. His morning coffee order got screwed up 3 days in a row at his regular shop. His dry cleaning was lost for 2 days. His gym membership was mysteriously canceled. His favorite parking spot downtown was always occupied by a different car. I watched him through the camera feeds, saw him getting more frustrated each day. He started looking around suspiciously, checking his phone constantly, jumping at shadows. Perfect. Meanwhile, at home, Alicia was getting bolder. She started running errands in the middle of the day, coming home with mussed hair and the smell of another man's cologne. She'd shower immediately, humming little songs to herself like she was drunk on secrets. I played the faithful husband, made her favorite meals, asked about her day, told her I loved her. And every night, I'd review the camera footage and add new details to my growing file on their affair. They were meeting at a cheap motel on Route 1 every Tuesday and Thursday. They'd been together in our house at least a dozen times. Dylan had been in our bedroom, used our shower, eaten food from our refrigerator. The audacity was breathtaking. But what really got me was the audio I captured from our living room. Alicia, laughing with Dylan about how Dean would never figure it out because he's too wrapped up in his little projects. Dylan joking about how I was practically doing the work for them by installing security systems everywhere. "He's so trusting," Alicia had said, her voice dripping with contempt. "Sometimes I think he's actually proud of how naive he is." That night, I sat in my workshop until 3 a.m., adding new elements to my plan. They thought I was stupid. They were about to learn just how smart a simple contractor could be. I started with Dylan's business. Real estate agents depend on reputation, and Dylan's reputation was about to take a serious hit. I'd been watching his computer through the backdoor access I'd installed during the security system setup. The man was sloppy with his files, keeping everything in easily accessible folders. I found what I was looking for on a Wednesday morning: photoshopped listing photos. Dylan had been digitally altering images to hide property damage, making apartments look bigger than they were, even adding fake amenities to some listings. It was fraud, plain and simple. I documented everything, took screenshots, saved files to multiple drives. Then I anonymously sent copies to the Maryland Real Estate Commission, the Better Business Bureau, and 3 local news stations. I used a VPN and an encrypted email account I'd set up specifically for this purpose. Within 48 hours, Dylan's phone was ringing nonstop. Angry clients, investigators, reporters. His business license was suspended pending investigation. His brokerage firm fired him to avoid association with the scandal. His name was mud in Baltimore real estate circles. I watched him through the security camera in his condo. Saw him pacing around his living room like a caged animal, making desperate phone calls to lawyers and PR firms. He had no idea where the leak had come from. In his mind, it was just bad luck, poor timing, a competitor trying to destroy him. If only he knew the truth. But I wasn't done, not even close. While Dylan's professional life was imploding, I turned my attention to his personal life. The man was a serial cheater, juggling multiple women besides my wife. I'd seen the evidence in his computer files, photos, messages, contact lists. He had a system, a rotation of married women who thought they were special. I decided to introduce them to each other. I created fake social media profiles for each woman and started a private group chat, sending them all the same message. "I think we need to talk about Dylan Maddox." Then I sat back and watched the fireworks. The group chat exploded within hours. Screenshots of messages, photos of gifts, stories of lies and broken promises. These women were furious and they were organizing. By the end of the week, they'd formed their own little revenge club, sharing information and coordinating attacks on Dylan's reputation. One of them, a divorce lawyer named Sandra, posted Dylan's photo on a Baltimore Cheaters Facebook group with a detailed description of his tactics. Another, a marketing executive named Kelly, used her professional connections to spread word about Dylan's character issues throughout the business community. But the real masterstroke came from Jessica, a nurse at Johns Hopkins who'd been seeing Dylan for 8 months. She had keys to his condo, and she used them to redecorate his bedroom with printouts of all his text messages to other women. She hung them like wallpaper, covering every surface with evidence of his betrayals. I watched through the security camera as Dylan came home to find his bedroom transformed into a shrine to his own dishonesty. He stood in the doorway for a full minute, just staring at the walls, reading his own words back to himself. Then he collapsed onto his bed and started crying. I felt a moment of satisfaction, but it was cold and hollow. This wasn't about Dylan anymore. It was about Alicia, about the 23 years she'd thrown away for a few afternoons of cheap thrills. Time for phase 3. I needed to confront them, but on my terms, in my way. I wanted them to understand exactly what they'd lost, and exactly what I was capable of when pushed too far. I started by renting a storage unit across town and moving half our belongings there. Important documents, family photos, my tools, anything that had real value. I did it slowly over the course of 2 weeks, taking only things Alicia wouldn't immediately notice. Next, I hired a lawyer. Not for divorce proceedings, not yet, but to protect my assets and understand my options. I presented the evidence I'd gathered, the videos and photos and messages, and asked him to prepare a comprehensive settlement proposal that would leave Alicia with as little as legally possible. "This is pretty freaking stuff," he said, scrolling through the files on his laptop. "She won't have much leverage in court." "Good," I replied. "I want her to understand consequences." The lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Hill, looked at me over her glasses. "Are you sure you don't want to try counseling first?" "Sometimes these things can be worked through." I thought about Alicia's laugh on the security recording, the way she'd mocked me to her lover. "No," I said. "Some things can't be fixed. They can only be torn down and rebuilt." Patricia nodded. "I'll have the papers ready by Friday." But I wasn't planning to serve her with papers. Not yet. I had something else in mind. I called Dylan's cell phone on a Thursday morning while he was still reeling from the bedroom incident. I used a voice modulator app to disguise my voice, making it sound robotic and threatening. "You've been having fun with other men's wives," I said when he answered. "Now it's time to pay the price." "Who is this?" Dylan asked, his voice shaking. "Someone who knows everything about you. Your business, your women, your dirty little secrets. I want you to meet me tonight at the Marriott on Key Highway, room 415. Come alone, or I'll send your entire client list a very interesting video." I hung up before he could respond. That afternoon, I called Alicia at her part-time job at the art gallery downtown. She'd been distracted lately, probably worried about Dylan's recent troubles, but she was still maintaining the facade of our marriage. "Hey, honey," I said, using the warm tone I'd perfected over the past month. "I want to surprise you tonight. I got us a room at the Marriott, like we used to do when we were dating." "Oh," she said, sounding flustered. "Tonight? I was going to, I have some errands to run." "Cancel them," I said firmly. When was the last time we had a real date night? Just the two of us? She paused and I could hear her brain working, trying to figure out how to contact Dylan and warn him. "Okay," she said finally. "What time?" "Meet me there at 8, room 415. "I'll be waiting." I spent the rest of the day preparing. I rented the hotel room using a fake name and cash, then spent hours setting up equipment, hidden cameras, audio recorders, even a small speaker system connected to my phone. I wanted to capture everything that was about to happen. At 7:30, I positioned myself in the hotel lobby where I could watch the elevators. Dylan arrived first, at 7:45, looking nervous and constantly checking his phone. He was wearing a cheap suit and carrying a briefcase, probably hoping to impress whoever had threatened him. Alicia arrived at exactly 8 o'clock, wearing the black dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. She looked beautiful and guilty, checking her reflection in the lobby mirrors before heading to the elevator. I waited another 10 minutes, then followed them up to the 4th floor. When I reached room 415, I could hear voices inside. Confusion, surprise, then recognition. Dylan and Alicia had found each other instead of finding me. I slipped the keycard into the lock and opened the door. They were sitting on opposite sides of the bed, staring at each other with matching expressions of dawning horror. Dylan's briefcase was on the floor between them, papers scattered everywhere. Alicia's purse was clutched in her lap like a shield. "Hello, darling," I said to Alicia, then turned to Dylan. "And hello to you too, partner." Dylan stood up quickly, his face flushing red. "Look, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but sit down," I said quietly, and something in my voice made him comply immediately. I closed the door behind me and engaged the deadbolt. Then I walked to the desk chair and sat down, facing them both. The room was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of traffic from the harbor. "So," I said, "how long have you two been cheating in my bed?" Alicia gasped, her face going pale. "Dean, I can explain." "7 months," I continued, consulting my phone as if reading from notes. "That's how long this has been going on." 7 months of lies, sneaking around, making me look like a fool. Dylan found his voice. "Listen, man, I didn't know she was married when we first... Bullshit." I showed them both my phone screen, displaying a photo of Dylan and Alicia kissing in our driveway 6 months ago. "You hired me to install security systems in your condo. You knew exactly who I was and exactly what you were doing." The room fell silent again. Alicia was staring at the photo, her mouth slightly open. Dylan was looking at the floor, his hands clenched into fists. "I have videos," I continued conversationally. "Hours of footage from my own security cameras. You two going at it on my couch, in my bed, in my kitchen. Audio recordings of you laughing about how stupid I am. Screenshots of every dirty message you've sent each other." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the Baltimore harbor. "You know what the funny thing is? I actually respected you, Dylan. I thought you were a successful businessman, someone worth learning from. And Alicia?" I turned back to her. "I thought you were the love of my life." "Dean, please," Alicia said, tears starting to roll down her cheeks. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I never meant to hurt you." "But you did hurt me," I said. "You destroyed our marriage, our trust, our future. You made me a laughingstock in my own home." Dylan stood up again, trying to salvage some dignity. "Look, emotions run high in these situations. Maybe we can work something out man to man." I laughed, and it was not a pleasant sound. "Man to man? You want to talk man to man?" I pulled out my phone and connected it to the room's speaker system. Then I played one of the audio recordings I'd captured from our living room. Alicia's voice filled the room. "Sometimes I think about leaving him, but then I remember how much money he makes. I mean, he's boring as heck, but he pays for everything. The house, the cars, my credit cards. I'd be stupid to give that up." Dylan's voice. "You could always take half in a divorce. California's a community property state." "We're in Maryland, you idiot," Alicia's voice laughed. "But yeah, I could probably get a decent settlement, especially if I play the neglected wife card." I stopped the recording and looked at them both. Alicia was crying openly now, her makeup running down her cheeks. Dylan looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "So," I said, sitting back down, "let's talk about consequences." I spent the next hour detailing exactly what I knew about both of them. Dylan's business fraud, his other affairs, his financial problems, Alicia's lies, her credit card debts, or her plans to divorce me for money. "Here's what's going to happen," I said finally. "Dylan, you're going to disappear from our lives. You're going to change your phone number, move to another city if necessary, and never contact my wife again. If you do, I'll send copies of these recordings to every real estate agency in Maryland." Dylan nodded quickly. "Yeah, okay. I can do that. And Alicia," I turned to my wife, "you're going to pack a bag and leave our house tonight. You can stay with your mother or your sister or whoever will take you in. We'll discuss divorce terms through lawyers." "Dean, wait," she said, reaching for my hand. "Can't we talk about this? I made a mistake, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling, work through this together." I pulled my hand away. "Some things can't be fixed, Alicia. They can only be torn down." I stood up and walked to the door. "You have 15 minutes to figure out your next moves. Then I'm leaving, and you're both on your own." I paused with my hand on the doorknob. "Oh, and one more thing. Dylan, I'd avoid driving that Mercedes for a while. I hear there have been some problems with car fires in the area. I left them sitting in that hotel room, staring at each other across the wreckage of their affair. As I walked down the hallway, I heard Alicia start crying again, harder this time. The sound followed me all the way to the elevator. When I got home, I poured myself a whiskey and sat in my workshop, looking at the security monitor feeds. The house was empty, exactly as I'd left it. For the first time in months, I was alone in my own home. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like loss. The next morning, I got a call from my lawyer. "Your wife's attorney wants to meet," Patricia said. "She's claiming emotional distress, possible harassment. She wants to negotiate a settlement." "What kind of settlement?" I asked. "Half of everything, plus alimony." "She's saying you've been stalking her, that you violated her privacy with illegal surveillance?" I laughed. "The surveillance was of my own home, installed with her knowledge, and I haven't stalked anyone. I've just been documenting adultery." That's what I told her lawyer. "But Dean, this could get messy. Are you prepared for a fight?" I thought about the 7 months of lies, the mockery, the betrayal. "I've been preparing for this fight longer than you know." The divorce proceedings took 6 months. Alicia hired an aggressive attorney who tried to paint me as a controlling, obsessive husband who had driven her into another man's arms. They claimed I was mentally unstable, that I'd violated her privacy, that I was a threat to her safety. But I had evidence. Video evidence, audio evidence, financial records, witness statements. I had proof of every lie, every betrayal, every moment of cruelty. Patricia presented it all methodically, building a case that left Alicia's claims looking desperate and false. The judge was not impressed with Alicia's arguments. "Mrs. Carter," he said during the final hearing, "you admit to conducting a 7-month affair in your marital home, using marital funds to support this relationship, and planning to divorce your husband for financial gain. Your claims of harassment appear to be an attempt to deflect from your own behavior." In the end, Alicia got the minimum required by Maryland law: a small settlement, no alimony, and a restraining order that prevented her from contacting me directly. She lost the house, the cars, most of our savings. She even had to pay her own legal fees. Dylan, meanwhile, had left town entirely. Last I heard, he was selling insurance in Philadelphia, living in a studio apartment and driving a 10-year-old Honda. His real estate career was finished in Maryland. I kept the house, my business, my tools, and my self-respect. I also kept all the security footage, stored on encrypted drives in a safe deposit box. Insurance, in case either of them ever decided to cause trouble in the future. But revenge, I learned, is a cold dish that doesn't satisfy the way you expect it to. 6 months after the divorce was final, I was installing a smart home system for a client in Towson when I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Dean?" It was Alicia's voice, small and uncertain. "You're not supposed to contact me," I said. "I know, I'm sorry. I wanted to apologize. Really apologize, not like in court." I set down my screwdriver and walked to the client's kitchen window, looking out at their backyard. Apologize for what exactly? For everything. For the affair, for the lies, for the way I treated you. For throwing away our marriage like it meant nothing. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. "I know you'll probably never forgive me," she continued, "but I need you to know that I realize what I lost. I had a good man who loved me, who took care of me, who built a life for us, and I threw it all away for nothing." "Dylan wasn't nothing," I said. "He was a choice. You chose him over me, over our marriage, over 23 years together." "I know, and it was the worst choice I've ever made." I ended the call without saying goodbye. That night, I sat in my workshop, now converted back to its original purpose, and thought about choices. Alicia had made hers. Dylan had made his. And I had made mine. I'd chosen to fight back, to expose the truth, to tear down the lies and rebuild something honest from the wreckage. I'd chosen justice over reconciliation, consequences over forgiveness. Some people might call it cold, some might call it cruel. But I call it construction work, demolishing the rotten parts and building something stronger in their place. A year later, I was contracted to install security systems in a new development outside Baltimore. The project manager was a woman named Sarah, smart, professional, direct. She was recently divorced herself, she mentioned during our initial meeting. Her ex-husband had been creatively dishonest with their finances. Trust is hard to rebuild once it's broken, she said, reviewing my proposal for the security installation. Some things can't be rebuilt, I replied. They can only be replaced. She smiled at that. You sound like you speak from experience. I do. We started with a professional relationship. Sarah needed someone reliable to handle the security work for her development, and I needed clients who understood the value of protecting what matters. But over the course of the project, we began talking more, sharing coffee breaks, discussing our respective experiences with betrayal and recovery. Sarah was nothing like Alicia. She was straightforward where Alicia had been manipulative, honest where Alicia had been deceptive, independent where Alicia had been calculating. She'd built her own construction company from scratch after her divorce, refusing to let betrayal define her future. I could have spent years trying to destroy my ex, she told me one afternoon while we reviewed security plans. But I decided to spend that energy building something better instead. Different approaches, I said. I needed to tear down before I could build up. And did it help? The tearing down? I thought about Alicia's phone call, about Dylan's ruined career, about the months of planning and execution that had consumed my life. It helped me understand what I was capable of. But it didn't heal what was broken, Sarah nodded. That's the thing about revenge. It's like surgery. Sometimes necessary, but it always leaves scars. By the time I finished the security installation, Sarah and I had moved beyond professional courtesy to genuine friendship. She appreciated my attention to detail, my commitment to quality work, my ability to solve complex problems. I appreciated her honesty, her strength, her refusal to let past betrayals poison her present choices. We've been together for 8 months now, not married, not rushing toward anything, just building something real and honest day by day. Sarah knows about Alicia and Dylan, knows about the security footage and the systematic destruction of their lies. She doesn't judge me for it, but she also doesn't celebrate it. You did what you felt you had to do, she said when I told her the whole story. But I'm glad you're not that angry anymore. She's right. The anger is gone, replaced by something calmer, but no less strong. I learned that I could be ruthless when necessary, that I could plan and execute and destroy when pushed too far. But I also learned that destruction, however justified, is exhausting work. Building is better. Building requires hope, requires faith in the future, requires belief that something good can emerge from honest effort. Sarah and I are building something together, not rushing it, not forcing it, just laying a foundation brick by brick. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd chosen differently. If I'd confronted Alicia directly instead of planning elaborate revenge. If I'd tried counseling instead of surveillance. If I'd chosen forgiveness instead of justice. But I don't regret the path I took. Alicia and Dylan needed to understand consequences, needed to face the truth about their choices. I needed to prove to myself that I wasn't the weak, naive fool they'd taken me for. The security systems I installed in that hotel room are still there, still recording, still protecting future guests from their own secrets. The GPS tracker I put on Dylan's Mercedes was probably discovered and removed years ago. The encrypted drives with evidence of their affair are locked away in my safe deposit box. Insurance against a past that no longer threatens my future. I still work as a contractor, still install security systems, still fix things that are broken. But now I also know when something is beyond repair, when the only honest response is to tear it down and start over. Last week, I got a call from a potential client whose wife had been cheating with his business partner. He'd seen my work at Sarah's development and wanted to discuss security options for his home. I need to know what's really going on, he said during our meeting. I need proof. I looked at him across his kitchen table. The same kitchen table where I'd once eaten breakfast with Alicia, where I'd planned my revenge, where I'd made the choice to fight back instead of walk away. Before we talk about security systems, I said, you need to decide what you're going to do with that proof once you have it. He looked confused. What do you mean? I mean, are you looking for truth or are you looking for weapons? Because they're not the same thing. He thought about that for a moment. I just want to know where I stand. Fair enough. But here's some free advice. Once you know the truth, you can't unknow it. Once you have proof, you have to decide what kind of person you want to be with that information. I helped him install a basic security system, nothing fancy, just enough to give him the answers he needed. I also gave him Patricia's business card and Sarah's perspective on building something new instead of tearing down the old. 2 months later, he called to thank me. He'd confronted his wife with the evidence, worked out a fair divorce settlement, and started the process of rebuilding his life. No elaborate revenge, no systematic destruction, just honest consequences and a fresh start. Different approach than I took, I told Sarah that evening over dinner. Different circumstances, she replied. You did what you needed to do at the time. And now? Now you're doing what you need to do now. Building instead of breaking. She was right. I'm still Dean Carter, still a contractor, still someone who fixes things for a living. But now I understand the difference between repair and replacement, between justice and revenge, between tearing down and building up. Some things can be fixed. Some things can only be replaced. And some things, the most important things, have to be built from scratch, with honest materials and patient hands and faith in the future. The security cameras in our house still record everything, still store footage to encrypted drives. But now they're protecting something worth protecting, something built on truth instead of lies, something that doesn't need to hide in shadows. I sleep better now. Dream less about hotel rooms and surveillance footage and the sound of my wife's laughter echoing through empty halls. Instead, I dream about blueprints and foundations and the satisfying weight of tools in my hands. Sarah says I smile more now, that the hardness around my eyes has softened. She says I look like someone who's learned the difference between building walls and building homes. She's right about that, too. I spent months learning how to tear things down, how to expose secrets and destroy lies and leave my enemies with nothing but the wreckage of their own choices. It was necessary work, important work, but it was never going to be enough. The real work, the work that matters, is what comes after, the slow, patient construction of something honest and strong and worth protecting. The daily choice to build instead of break, to hope instead of plan, to trust instead of verify. I'm good at this work too, better than I ever was at revenge. This morning, Sarah and I walked through the frame of a house I'm building on the lot next to hers. It's going to be our home eventually. Not rushed, not forced, just the natural next step in something we're building together. Well, what kind of security system are you planning? She asked, running her hand along the wooden frame of what will be our living room. The usual, I said. Cameras, motion sensors, smart locks, nothing too elaborate. She smiled. Good. I want to feel safe, but I don't want to live in a fortress. No fortresses, I agreed. Just a home. As we walked back to her place, I thought about the difference between the house I'd shared with Alicia and the one I'm building with Sarah. Same architect, same builder, same attention to detail. But this one is being built on truth instead of lies, on shared choices instead of hidden betrayals, on hope instead of fear. Some things can't be fixed. But some things can be built from scratch, better and stronger than what came before.